Hello, I'm Gary Godden and I'm your Police and Crime Commissioner for Nottinghamshire. Rural crime is a significant issue impacting some of the most vulnerable and isolated communities in Nottinghamshire, often very unnoticed communities. As part of a Safer Nottinghamshire for All plan, I am dedicated to enhancing the visibility, accessibility and capacity of our neighbourhood policing teams. This means ensuring more officers are present on the beat and actively engaging with our communities, with the communities that they serve. One of my priorities is neighbourhood policing, and very shortly in Nottinghamshire you will see a significant change in the model of neighbourhood policing, which will benefit all of our communities. I understand the feelings of isolation within our rural communities, and I aim to ensure residents are familiar with their neighbourhood teams and know how to reach them. I want rural residents to feel confident in reporting crimes to the police, assured that appropriate actions will be taken. We, the police and the Office of Police and Crime Commissioner are committed to improving the quality and effectiveness of police responses by equipping officers with necessary resources, training skills and capabilities. That is why we have a rural policing team who have capacity to deal with specific issues that relate to rural crime. My goal is to ensure victims receive the support they need and have a stronger voice in shaping the local services. We will strengthen our partnership efforts to protect the vulnerable and maintain community safety. It is my priority to make sure that all the communities of Nottinghamshire are safe, and those who are in the rural communities have a voice and are able to access the police when they need them.
I'm Tim Passmore, Suffolk Police and Crime Commissioner and Chair of the National Rural Crime Network. I want to highlight the importance of National Rural Crime Week. The rural economy is really important for us all here in England and Wales, and particularly the farming industry and the preservation of the rural way of life. Locally, we've got a lot of initiatives with the Country Landowners and Business Association, the National Farmers Union, Countryside Alliance and the Rural Services Network. We need to raise the profile to government that rural crime matters, it needs to be properly policed, and our big rural police forces such as Suffolk and elsewhere do need adequate financial support from the government. We've got a 10-point action plan which we hope to implement over the next few years. Do look us up on the web and join with us for making sure that the rural economy is prioritised in policing as we go forward.
Hi, my name's Donna Jones and I'm the Police and Crime Commissioner for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. Here in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, we have two of the most beautiful counties in England. We also are the 5th largest police force in the country, representing hundreds of square miles of rural and beautiful countryside areas. We have 2 national parks and we have lots of places of special scientific interest. As Police and Crime Commissioner, I really understand the growing threat and risk that has been emerging over recent years coming from organised crime gangs working across rural and countryside areas. So rural gangs targeting plant, machinery, stealing quad bikes for example, and particularly in my county they will very quickly pass through the port of Southampton into containers and often shipped to the Eastern Bloc. We know the impact that this has on landowners and farmers. We know how devastating rural crime can be. Hare coursing, for example, feels this year like it never really stopped. The season ended and it started early. We know that the churning up of fields means that field will be out of action for a whole season for a farmer, really affecting their income. We also know of the black market gambling associated with so many of our rural crimes. No longer are these just opportunistic thieves. We know that cases, lands and farms are staked out and that organised crime gangs will go and steal to order. This has to stop. We have reintroduced area cars, and this is our trained response and patrol officers who, when they get to the top of their profession, are able to apply to become an area car driver. It's very much seen as an aspirational role. They're often the first on scene when a crime is reported in a rural area, and they will know those rural communities like the back of their hands, sometimes where a sat-nav or a GPS tracker will not be able to find the property. The drivers know exactly, the police officers know exactly where to go. Furthermore, we've then invested in more ANPR cameras that the police can move around rural areas. We've invested in our intelligence cell in the force so that we can be tracking these organised crime gangs, as I say, particularly those working in rural communities. And we've also invested in some of the best and most capable drone technology available in the market. Some of it is even controlled remotely from a location much further away. This gives us a really agile response to being able to cover thousands of square miles of land across the two counties of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. Tackling rural crime is important. It helps people who live in rural communities feel safer, to feel less disconnected, and to feel very much closer to their police service. So together, working with our brilliant rural communities across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, I know in my police force area we are going to be targeting more criminal gangs in the year ahead, catching more people and bringing more people to justice.
Tackling and reducing rural crime in Staffordshire is really important. It's a highlight in my policing plan, which I'm consulting on at the moment, and Staffordshire Police are already bringing in a new approach, a new focus with a proactive rural and wildlife team to address issues like plant and vehicle hire, business crime and more traditional crimes like burglary. The key thing is, in a rural environment, people can feel a little more isolated, a whole community can be affected by a crime, so the impact is greater. That's why it's a priority for me and it's a priority for Staffordshire Police, and we're working together with partners in the community to keep you updated and deal with the issues.
So I'm Philip Wilkinson, I'm the Police and Crime Commissioner for Wiltshire and Swindon, and I'm currently at a farm just outside Royal Wootton Bassett, which is up towards Swindon for those who don't know. And we are engaging, communicating with a local farmer because, you know, one of my priorities and that of the Chief Constable is to be much more proactive in how we address rural crime and how we go after those conducting rural crimes. So what we have done in my tenure as the PCC, we've expanded the rural crime team by a factor of 3. We've given them a whole range of night vision devices, and we have also given them drones which have a thermal capacity so we can deploy them after dark to track, trace, monitor those committing rural crimes. Now, what is really important is that rural crimes are crimes in general. They are not any different from those crimes frequently committed in those urban areas and towns. That means that we need a whole force response to rural crime to tackle those individuals who are conducting hare coursing, which is a recreational activity often undertaken by those organised crime gangs who are conducting the acquisitive crime, that's robbing and raiding our farms, and hare coursing is their recreational activity. So if we go after the hare coursers, we are going after the same people who are generally robbing and raiding and stealing tens, possibly hundreds of thousands of pounds and causing huge damage to the crops, to the farm buildings, to the fields, to the gates, to the hedges of our farmers. And those individuals, when challenged, are extremely dangerous. And that is why we have a whole of force response to rural crime. What I mean by that is we have in the first echelon the rural crime team. They are the specialists in rural crime. They act as the liaison officers, the scouts, if you like, with the farming community. They are supported by the neighbourhood teams. The neighbourhood teams are supported by response and then specialist response. Specialist response will include dogs, drones, helicopters, and ultimately the armed response team. This is a team of officers who are fully tooled up with a full suite of small arms. What we have had recently is some significant successes because of that, and in the last few days we have arrested a number of hare coursers local to this farm and within Wiltshire, and that has been a consequence of that whole force approach. So we start with rural crime, then neighbours. It is a whole of force response which is proactive because it's intelligence led, and we get that intelligence from communicating and talking to our partners. This is all absolutely in line with my police and crime plan and the Chief Constable's priorities that she has set, where she has set for rural crime, hare coursing, and the acquisitive crime. That's the theft of rural agricultural plant and equipment. So everything now is focused, joined up, coherent and coordinated. We are going to go after those individuals and groups and those networks who are making the lives of our rural communities and farmers much less safe than it should be.
Here in Gwent, it's really important that we connect with all of our communities, and I'm really pleased to say that in Gwent we've got a dedicated rural crime unit specifically focusing on our rural areas.